Okay, take a moment. Maybe just wiggle your toes. Seems
Yeah.
tiny, right?
Yeah, simple action.
But under the surface, as you just did that, hundreds of muscles were doing this. This whole silent symphony thing. It's kind of wild how much we rely on our muscular system, often without even, thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely. It's this massive network, right?
Mm,
Over 650 muscles. They're the engines for basically everything.
everything.
Well, yeah, from big stuff like running, jumping,
Right.
down to the really fine control like threading a needle, and even the stuff we don't think about, breathing, heart beating. It's just immense power, but also incredibly intricate.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've pulled together some really fascinating material to properly unpack how these, well, biological powerhouses actually work.
Mhm.
Our mission really is to pull out the most crucial bits, the really mind-blowing stuff about our muscles, how they work from like the cellular level right up to whole body movement.
And, just to start, it's important to remember it's not all just one type of tissue. There are three main players, really.
Right.
You've got a skeletal muscle. That's the one we mostly control.
Right.
Then cardiac muscle, which is, the heart's engine. And smooth muscle, working away quietly in our organs, blood vessels. We'll dig into what makes each one tick.
Okay, let's get right down to basics then. What are we actually looking at with muscle tissue generally? What's the common element?
Well, fundamentally, all three types are built from muscle cells. We often call them fibers because they're long and thin.
Fibers, okay.
Think of them like individual strands, yeah.
Sure.
And they get bundled together kind of like wires in a cable. And the really cool part is these bundles contract when they get a signal from the nervous system.
The signal triggers it.
Exactly. And that contraction happening down at the microscopic level in these fibers, that's what generates the force for movement, whether it's, lifting something heavy or just the pulsing of a blood vessel.
So nerve signal, fiber bundles, contract, creates motion. Simple enough. But our sources mention some exceptions. Parts of the body moving without typical muscle action. That seems odd.
It is, yeah. It's fascinating. While muscles are the main movers, nature's got other tricks up its sleeve, like sperm cells.
Okay.
They swim using these little whip-like tails, flagella. Totally different mechanism. Or think about the cilia in your airways.
The tiny hairs.
Yeah. They beat together to move mucus along, not muscle contraction. And even some white blood cells can kind of crawl through tissues using non-muscle ways. It just shows you the sheer variety of biological movement out there.
That really does broaden the picture. Okay, so back to muscle contraction itself. It's not just like on or off, is it? There are different ways muscles exert force.
Absolutely. We can break it down into, well, three main types, each doing something slightly different. First, you've got concentric contraction.
Concentric.
That's probably what most people picture. The muscle fibers actually shorten as they create force, like bending your elbow to lift a cup, your biceps shortens.
Okay, muscle gets shorter, does the lift. So the opposite would be
Eccentric contraction. Yeah, this is where the muscle fibers are working, generating force, but they're actually lengthening.
lengthening while working. How?
Think about slowly lowering that cup back down. Your biceps is still engaged, right? Controlling the descent. But its fibers are lengthening. And actually, the triceps on the other side would be shortening to help control it too.
Ah, okay. That makes sense for control. Counterintuitive, but it clicks. What about the third type? Stability.
Right, that's isometric contraction. Iso means same, metric means length. So the fibers generate force, but the muscle's length doesn't really change much, if at all.
Like just holding something.
Exactly, holding that cup steady.
Yeah.
Your forearm muscles are firing, but not shortening or lengthening much.
Cool.
Or leaning against a wall. Lots of muscles working isometrically just to hold your posture. Absolutely key for stability, posture, countless everyday things.
Got it. Okay. Basics covered. Now let's zoom in on the big one for movement we think about. Skeletal muscle. This
Right.
sounds like the powerhouse for voluntary stuff.
Precisely. Yes. Skeletal muscle is the bulk of it. We're talking, what, 30 to 40% of your body weight? And like the name says, it's mostly attached to your bones, responsible for pretty much all the movements we choose to make.
Yeah, we know the obvious ones, pecs, biceps. But the sources mention some less famous ones. Buccinator, stapedius. What's their deal?
Oh, they're great examples of the sheer range. The buccinator, it's in your cheek. One source said it basically tethers your cheek to your teeth.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's vital for chewing, but also expressions like puffing your cheeks out. And then the stapedius, this one's amazing. It's deep in your middle ear,
Tiny.
the tiniest skeletal muscle in the whole body,
Yeah.
maybe a millimeter long. Its job, to dampen vibrations from one of the little ear bones,
Yeah.
protect your hearing. So yeah, from your face to deep inside your ear, skeletal muscles are everywhere doing all sorts of jobs.
Wow, cheek to inner ear, that really shows the range. And the main thing is we control these, mostly, like a direct line.
That's largely right, yeah. Skeletal muscles hook up to the somatic nervous system. That's the part handling voluntary control. So you decide to lift your arm, kick a ball, make a face.
Even if it becomes automatic later, the initial command is conscious.
Exactly. Though, yeah, practice makes things feel automatic, but the potential for conscious control is there.
Now, the sources also broke down skeletal muscle fibers themselves, slow twitch and fast twitch. What's the core difference there?
Ah, yeah, think of them like different engine types. Fast switch fibers, they're the sprinters.
Speed demons.
Right. They generate force super quickly. Explosive power for sprinting, lifting heavy. But they also tire out relatively fast, burn through energy quickly.
Quick power, low stamina. So slow twitch are the marathon runners.
Exactly. Slow twitch contract more slowly, less peak force, but they're way more efficient with energy. They can keep going for ages without fatigue.
Makes sense.
So yeah, a sprinter might train to get more fast twitch in their legs. But the muscles in your back, holding you up all day, they tend to be packed with slow twitch fibers.
Yeah.
It's about matching the fiber type to the job.
Great analogy, like the body knows where to put which engine. Okay, let's go even deeper. Microscopic organization. The sources said skeletal fibers aren't just jumbled up. There's a structure.
Oh, absolutely.
How?
Highly precise structure, crucial for how they generate force. The individual fibers, they lie parallel to each other.
Why parallel?
So the force they generate adds up in the same direction. Makes sense,
Yeah.
right? And each single fiber is wrapped in a thin layer of connective tissue.
Okay.
Then groups of these fibers get bundled together into things called fascicles.
Fascicles. Got it.
And each fascicle also gets wrapped in its own connective tissue layer. It's this whole hierarchy. Provides support, sure, but also pathways for nerves and blood vessels to get to every fiber.
So it's like a big cable made of smaller cables, which are made of individual wires all wrapped up. And then we get really, really small, the sarcomere. What's the deal with the sarcomere? Why is it so important?
The sarcomere is, well, it's the fundamental unit of contraction. Think of it as the smallest piece of the muscle fiber that can actually shorten and create force.
The basic engine part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to understand how a muscle contracts at the molecular level, you got to understand the sarcomere.
Okay, and the diagram showed it's like a complex little machine itself, lots of parts. Can you walk us through the key players?
Sure. So the whole muscle fiber is wrapped in its membrane, the sarcolemma. Inside is the sarcoplasm, that's like the cell's cytoplasm.
Mm-hmm.
Running through that are myofibrils, bundles of protein filaments. And wrapped around those is this network, the sarcoplasmic reticulum, or SR.
SR.
Yeah, it's basically a calcium storage tank. Calcium ions are absolutely critical to kick off contraction. Then you have T-tubules.
T-tubules.
Think of them as tiny tunnels diving inwards from the surface membrane, the sarcolemma. They carry the electrical signal deep inside the fiber, fast.
So the signal gets everywhere, quickly.
Okay.
And the actual moving parts, the filaments.
Right. Those are the thick and thin filaments. Thick filaments are mostly a protein called myosin. Thin filaments are mainly actin.
Myosin and actin, heard of those?
Yeah, they're the stars. Within the sarcomere, they're arranged in this really specific overlapping pattern. The edges of the sarcomere are marked by Z discs. Thin filaments attached to these Z discs.
Okay.
In the middle, there's the M line, which anchors the thick filaments. And under a microscope, you see bands. The I band is lighter, only thin filaments. The A band is darker. That's the full length of the thick filaments. And inside the A band, there's a slightly lighter H zone, only thick filaments there. It's this whole organized structure that makes contraction possible.
Wow, that is incredibly detailed. But the diagram helps picture those bands and lines. And it's the actin and myosin interacting, pulling on each other, that makes the force.
Exactly. They form these temporary links called cross bridges. The heads on the myosin molecules grab onto the actin filaments and pull.
Like tiny molecular oars rowing.
Kinda, yeah. And they're arranged in this 3D lattice where they overlap. Thin filaments linked at the Z disc, thick ones at the M line. And get this, the geometry is super specific. Each thin filament sits between 3 thick ones, and each thick one is surrounded by 6 thin ones.
Whoa, why so specific?
Maximum efficiency for force generation. It ensures lots of potential cross-bridge connections.
Mind-boggling precision. And there are other proteins too, titin and nebulin. What do they do?
Right, they're key structural players. Titin is this huge elastic protein, runs from the Z disc to the M line. Acts like a molecular spring.
A spring.
Yeah. Gives the muscle elasticity, helps it snap back to resting length after stretching. Plus, it helps stabilize the myosin filaments, keep them centered. Nebulin's another big one, associated with the thin filaments. It basically helps set the length of the actin filaments and keeps them aligned properly.
So they're like the internal scaffolding and springs, keeping everything positioned and working right.
You got it. Essential support crew for the sarcomere engine.
Okay, back to those fiber types. The sources mentioned a more detailed classification based on contraction speed and energy production.
Yes, exactly. We can refine it. You have slow-twitch oxidative fibers, that's type 1.
Endurance ones.
Right. They mainly use phosphorylation, needs oxygen to make ATP, the energy molecule. Then there are fast-twitch oxidative glycolytic fibers, type 2A.
The hybrid?
Kind of, yeah. Fast, but can use oxygen in glycolysis, which doesn't need oxygen. Versatile. And then you have fast-twitch glycolytic fibers, sometimes called type 2X in other animals. In humans, it might be more like a subtype, type 2B, really focused on glycolysis for quick energy bursts.
So type 1 for endurance, 2A, the all-rounder, and 2XB for pure sprints, mostly in animals. What are the key performance differences we see?
Well, the type 2 fibers, both 2A and the more glycolytic ones, generate tension much, much faster than type 1. They also chew through ATP quicker, fueling that faster contraction.
Faster, more powerful, but maybe tire faster if they rely just on glycolysis.
Exactly. And the way they make energy, the metabolism, is key to why they perform differently.
Right, the oxidative versus glycolytic thing.
Yeah. The oxidative ones, type 1 and 2A, rely heavily on those mitochondria, the cell's power plants, and need lots of oxygen. So they tend to have more mitochondria, a denser network of blood vessels nearby.
To deliver the oxygen.
Precisely. And more myoglobin, that's a protein like hemoglobin in blood, helps grab and store oxygen right there in the muscle fiber. Gives them a redder look, actually.
More mitochondria, blood flow, oxygen storage, the endurance package. And the sources mention plasticity, that fibers can actually change type.
It's incredible, isn't it? They're not fixed, they adapt. If you do a lot of endurance training, your muscles respond. Fibers can increase their oxidative capacity. You might even see some fast-twitch fibers shift characteristics towards slow-twitch.
So training can literally reshape the muscle fiber type.
To an extent, yes. It's why specific training works so well. Our muscles can remodel themselves for the job we ask them to do. It's pretty amazing adaptability.
That is amazing. Okay, let's shift gears. The other two muscle types, cardiac and smooth. How do they differ from skeletal?
Biggest difference. Control. Skeletal is mostly voluntary, somatic nervous system. Cardiac and smooth. They're run by the autonomic nervous system.
Autonomic meaning? Automatic? Involuntary?
Pretty much, yeah. They work without us consciously telling them to. Cardiac muscle, well, that's the heart, obviously, found only there.
Right.
Unique structure, kind of a net-like arrangement of cells forming the heart chambers. Its job is just relentless, rhythmic contraction to pump blood.
And smooth muscle, where's that hiding and what's it up to?
Smooth muscle lines the walls of blood vessels, internal organs, intestines, stomach, bladder, uterus.
All the internal plumbing and machinery.
Basically, yeah. Also controlled by the autonomic system, plus hormones, local chemicals. It does tons of jobs, constricting blood vessels to manage blood pressure, pushing food through your gut, uterine contractions, the quiet workhorse of internal functions.
Unsung hero, definitely. And the source highlighting the heart's endurance, that number was staggering.
It really is. 3 billion beats in a lifetime, roughly, nonstop. It's just a marvel of biological engineering.
Seriously. And smooth muscle even pops up in breathing. I thought that was all skeletal diaphragm action.
The diaphragm, the main breathing muscle, is skeletal. But smooth muscle lines the airways, too. You can constrict or relax them, affecting airflow. So even there, involuntary muscle plays a part.
Okay, so muscles aren't just movers, they're regulators, pumps, and heaters. What's this about body temperature?
Yeah, big role there. When muscles work, they use energy, right? And a major byproduct of burning that energy is heat.
Like an engine getting warm.
Exactly. And our muscles generate something like 85% of our body heat. Blood circulates it around, keeps our core temperature stable. Super important for keeping all our body chemistry working right. Basically, for survival. Even when you're sitting still, muscle tone generates heat.
Wow, 85%. That's huge. Okay, now, complex movements. It's rarely just one muscle working alone, is it? It sounds more like a team effort.
Oh, absolutely. Most movements involve several muscles coordinating, each with a specific role. You have the prime mover, or agonist. That's the main muscle doing the job.
Star player.
Kinda, yeah. Then you have antagonists. They oppose the prime mover's action.
Work against it.
Not really against it, more like controlling it. They allow for smooth, precise movement instead of just jerky actions. Then synergists, they help the prime mover.
Helpers.
Yeah, add extra force or stabilize the joint so the prime mover can work better, prevent unwanted side movements. And finally, fixators. They stabilize the starting point, the origin of the prime mover, like bracing one end so the other can pull effectively.
It really is like a synchronized team. And a single muscle can play different roles depending on the action.
Totally. A muscle's role isn't fixed. Biceps bends the elbow prime mover. But it can also help with certain shoulder movements, acting as a synergist then. This flexibility lets us do incredibly complex things with a limited set of muscles.
Okay, maybe a simpler question, but the sources mentioned it. How do muscles get their names? Some are real tongue twisters. Is there a logic?
Huh. Yes, thankfully there is a logic. They're usually named based on a few things, often combined. Location is a big one, temporalis muscle near the temporal bone.
Makes sense.
Shape like the deltoid, shaped like a triangle, a delta. Size maximus for large, minimus for small, like gluteus maximus and minimus.
Oh, okay.
Direction of fibers, rectus abdominis, rectus means straight. Number of origins, where it starts, biceps means 2 heads, triceps means 3.
Biceps, triceps, right.
Sometimes it's the attachment points. Origin and insertion, sternocleidomastoid connects sternum, clavicle, mastoid process. And finally, its action flexors bend things, extensors straighten them. Understanding the code makes the names less scary.
That actually helps a lot. Cracking the code. Okay, mechanics. How does muscle force actually create movement using bones and joints? The whole leverage idea.
Right, this is basic physics, really.
Yeah.
Our musculoskeletal system acts like a system of levers. Bones are the rigid lever arms. Joints are the fulcrums, the pivot points.
And the muscle pull is the effort.
Exactly. Muscle contraction provides the force, the effort to move a load, which could be your limb itself or something you're holding.
And the classic example is the forearm, biceps curl again.
Perfect example. Forearm bone is the lever, elbow joint is the fulcrum, biceps pulls on the forearm bone. That's the effort to lift the weight in your hand, that's the load.
And the sources had that calculation.
Yeah.
Showing the biceps has to pull way harder than the weight itself. Why is that?
Yeah, it's about distances. The distance from where the biceps attaches to the bone, to the elbow joint.
Yep.
The fulcrum is pretty short, say 5 centimeters. That's the effort arm or force arm.
Okay,
Yeah.
short distance.
But the distance from the weight in your hand, the load to the elbow, much longer, maybe 30 centimeters. That's the load arm or resistance arm, BR.
Right, much longer.
So to lift it, the force from the muscle, FM, times its short distance, BF, has to equal the load's force.
Oh.
Weight, say, 10 kilograms, which is about 98 newtons, times its long distance, PR.
Okay.
So FM times 5 equals 98 times 30.
Okay.
If you solve for FM, the muscle force, it comes out nearly 600 newtons, way more than the 98 newton weight. Our leverage often means muscles need to generate huge forces for relatively small external loads. It's a trade-off, often prioritizing range of motion over force efficiency.
Gives you new respect for lifting anything. Okay, what about speed? How fast can muscles contract? What determines that?
2 main things. The fiber type, those fast twitch versus slow twitch we talked about, and the load the muscle's working against.
Fiber type and resistance.
Yep. Muscles with more fast twitch fibers contract faster, naturally. But for any muscle, the speed drops as the load increases. Fastest contraction, basically no load. As the load gets heavier, contraction slows down until you hit a load so heavy the muscle just can't shorten anymore. Speed becomes 0.
Makes sense. Can't lift a car quickly, if at all. Now, sadly, things can go wrong. Muscle dysfunction. What kind of issues did the sources mention?
Yeah, it's a wide range. Problems can start in the brain or spinal cord, the central nervous system signals, or at the connection point between nerve and muscle, the neuromuscular junction.
The synapse.
Right. Or the issue could be within the muscle fiber itself, maybe injury, overuse, or even disuse, muscles wasting away. Then there are diseases, things like the flu can cause muscle aches, or more specific nasty stuff like botulism, tetanus, and genetics.
Genetics, like muscular dystrophy.
Exactly. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, for example. It's a devastating genetic disorder, progressive muscle weakening.
What's the underlying cause there?
It boils down to a protein called dystrophin, or rather a lack of it. Dystrophin normally helps keep the muscle cell membrane stable and strong during contraction, like a shock absorber.
Okay.
Without enough dystrophin, the membrane gets fragile, damaged easily during contraction. This lets too much calcium leak into the muscle fiber.
And calcium is bad in excess.
In this context, yeah. The excess calcium activates enzymes that actually break down the muscle fiber components. Leads to muscle degeneration, loss of function. It's a tragic cascade effect.
Heartbreaking to understand that mechanism. Okay, back to control. We talked somatic nervous system for skeletal muscles voluntary, but the autonomic system for smooth and cardiac involves reflexes.
Yes, exactly. Autonomic or visceral reflexes, they handle the involuntary stuff, keeping our internal environment stable homeostasis. No conscious thought needed.
What are some everyday examples?
Well, think about urination, defecation. There's some voluntary control, sure, but the core muscle actions are spinal reflexes in the autonomic system. Emotions can even influence them. And many other reflexes are coordinated in the brain, hypothalamus, brainstem. These manage heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, digestion, body temp, all the background maintenance. Plus, protective reflexes, salivating, vomiting, sneezing, coughing, swallowing, gagging, all rapid, involuntary autonomic responses.
So many vital things just happening. And the sources linked emotions to these, the gut feeling idea.
Definitely. The limbic system, often called the emotional brain, is tightly connected to the autonomic system. That's why strong emotions trigger physical, visceral responses.
Like butterflies in your stomach.
Exactly. Or that gut feeling of anxiety. Even your hair standing on end piloerection, that's an autonomic response, often tied to fear or excitement. Shows that deep mind-body link.
Incredible connection. Okay, let's end on a lighter note. The sources had some fun, kind of quirky muscle facts.
Huh. Yeah, some good ones, like frowning takes more muscles than smiling.
Really?
Takes 43 muscles to frown, apparently, but only 17 to smile.
God.
And maybe even better, smiling supposedly burn slightly more calories than frowning. So, physiological reason to be happy.
I love that. A tiny facial workout. What else?
Well, the strongest muscle, based on force it can exert for chewing, the masseter, the near to jaw.
The jaw muscle.
Smallest skeletal muscle, that's stapedius in the ear we mentioned. And the biggest,
Got to be the glutes, right?
gluteus maximus, yeah. Your buttock muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Largest by volume, and a powerhouse for moving your thigh, stabilizing your hip, walking, climbing, standing up. It's working hard.
From the tiny stapedius to the massive gluteus maximus. What a range. It really drives home how complex and, well, essential this whole system is.
It really does. It's woven into almost everything we do, from huge movements to just breathing. A system we totally take for granted, but it's constantly running this incredibly complex orchestra inside us.
Absolutely. So maybe as you go about your day-to-day, just, notice it for a second. That constant, intricate coordination happening right now, powered by this huge network of muscles, makes you wonder, what other simple things our bodies do involve such hidden, amazing complexity? Something to think about, definitely. We hope this deep dive gave you a new appreciation for the sheer power and elegance of your own muscular system.